Welcome, and thank you so much for coming. My name is Shane Snow. I'm from one of the companies involved here, but you're sitting among colleagues from some of the biggest and boldest media companies and agencies in the world, the people who are thinking about innovation in content, and so that's why we're here. But before we start, because I know no one will pay attention until they know the Wi-Fi password, it's on the agenda on the back cover. So if you open up a web browser, it'll ask you for a password. It's just Innovate Content with capitals. So first of all, just by way of introduction, why this conference? Several of us in the New York tech startup scene were joking a few months ago about how we ought to buy a warehouse for all of the media startups and just all get together and sort of cram together on tables and work together, because there's so many of us working on different pieces of sort of the puzzle of the future of media and the future of content. So we were joking about this, and then we actually said, you know, we're here in the trenches in startups dedicating pieces of our lives to these trends that we're seeing happening with technology and media. There's a lot we can learn from each other. Why don't we share that with each other and with our friends in the media here in New York City? So that's what this is about. There are many, many trends being driven by technology in the in the media industry, and each of the 5 startups who are sort of founding this conference will talk about those trends. But also we have some great keynote speakers. And first I want to thank really quickly our sponsor. Our big sponsor is Silicon Valley Bank, who very generously helped us put this event on. They are very supportive of startups in the New York community. And many of the startups that we associate with and that are here today use them for their banking needs, so they don't have to worry about finance. They can worry about innovating in media. So a big thanks to them and a big round of applause. Also, Pretzel Crisps is here with free Pretzel Crisps, and to encourage everyone to tweet, please tweet with the hashtag IC12. And some lucky person is going to get a bunch of Pretzel Crisps if they tweet. So please do that. We want to document this event. So the 5 pieces to the content ecosystem that we'll be talking about today are adapt, create, engage, share, and syndicate. And the lineup is going to be, first I'll give a few thoughts on creating content. Then we'll have Christina Cordova from Pulse, who is innovating in mobile content. Then we'll have Scott Rowan, the VP of Digital from American Express. They're doing a lot of innovative stuff with branded content. Brian Bursick from Simple Reach will talk about social sharing and tracking content. Jonah Preddy is going to talk about Mormons, apparently, a subject dear to my heart. And he's the founder of BuzzFeed. It's going to be very exciting. Then Jordan Kretschmer from Livefire is going to talk about community and the ecosystem around content. Shafqat Islam from NewsCred will talk about brands as publishers and staying relevant in the new media world. And then we'll have a great interview with Eli Pariser and Glynis McNichol, and I totally apologize if I didn't pronounce that right, but it's going to be great. They're going to talk about what audiences are missing online and filtering through the noise. So with that, we will kick off. These presentations are meant to be rapid fire. If there's time at the end of some of them, there can be questions. We're just going to go. All right, creating content that makes a difference. This is a picture of my bookshelf at home, in my home office, if you could call it that. You can see the content that makes a difference in my life. Details Magazine is desperately trying to help me not dress like a slob. Wired Magazine makes a difference in my life, not only because I think the future of science and technology is important, but they also pay me to write for them. You can see a little bit Curation Nation and Switch, some of the books on my bookshelf, things that I care about, make a difference in my thinking. But perhaps most importantly, if you zoom out, the X-Files have made a big difference in my life. If you can see the poster there in the corner. So it's a social media world. Why talk about magazines? I like to think of magazines in context of the future of content innovation on the web, in that you don't accidentally buy a magazine. You only buy what you want to consume and what you're actually interested in. You only pay for the content that you want. And because of the social media world we're in now on the web, people, it's true, no one wants to consume content that sucks. And it used to be that it was very easy to be sort of tricked into arriving at content that sucked, or accidentally fall into content when you're on your way to content you actually care about. I can't imagine running into this article on eHow or WikiHow or wherever this is from on how to put on a pair of pants if I know how to use the internet. So the thing about quality that we're seeing is there's sort of this resurgence in this race to creating quality content now that social media allows you to leapfrog bad content and more content is consumed through social. And yet the definition of quality is very fuzzy. Is quality about how grammatically correct something is, or being free of typos, or how important the person is who's talking about it? I have a bit of a unique definition for quality that I have come to terms with. I think that you can measure quality content in that the highest quality content is the content that makes the most difference to the most people. I think content can make a difference in 3 big ways. For businesses, it can make a difference in helping businesses make money. So publishers, helping them stay in business. That's one difference content can make. Perhaps most importantly, content makes a difference in the audiences it reaches, helping them form stronger relationships, build bigger networks, and also become smarter, more informed, better voters, better citizens, better people. And then for me, what I care about a lot is good quality content helps creative talent survive and compensates creative talent for the work they do so that content can continue to be excellent. Really quick, defining content. We're all here talking about content for the whole day. For this talk, defining content as substantive information or creative material, what's inside the wrapper, what's being supported by the ads, and increasingly what's being created by the advertisers in an objective or transparent way. I predict that the publishers that will dominate the next generation of media will be the publishers who care about making a difference to the most people. And to that end, I want to talk about 3 examples of publishers who have cropped up in the most recent phase of media on the internet, have risen to prominence, and how they create content, and how you can take some of their lessons into your own content creation operations. So first, The Verge. I love The Verge. It started about a year ago. A bunch of guys from Engadget broke off, wanted to start their own technology site. They built not just a clone of Engadget and Gizmodo and the other gadget sites, but from the ground up, they thought of their media property as a media stack, where there's technology, there's community, and then there's well-designed editorial content. So they brought this superhero team of collaborators together, the best and the most influential in the space, came together to form this site, and then they started creating content and actually caring about the presentation of the content on the web. They put a lot of thought into the editorial design, and I just read this article the other day on the history of dubstep that was at least a 35-minute read. They're doing long-form content on the web, which is usually very difficult to pull off, but because of their editorial design, it comes off very elegant and amazing, and you should see the number of comments that these guys get on their content. And in just a year, they've jumped into the top 10 blogs on the internet, one of the most influential media properties. The ones that are there above them have been around for much, much longer and are all about politics. And this is what the managing editor of The Verge says about their process for how they create content. It says, we're basically always arguing about the best ideas to show our readers and the best ways to present their content. So they think about what the readers want first, not how they're going to turn page views. And perhaps paradoxically, that actually gets them more page views. This is a quote that's from a long-form story that's actually coming out in our magazine about basically a case study of the rise of The Verge. So how The Verge creates content that makes a difference. Editorial design that makes it a pleasure to consume content, even for long periods of time. Stories and headlines that are based on what will make people look intelligent to their friends and what people want to read, not just what they're accidentally going to read so that you can generate a page view. They got a superhero lineup of talent that is influential as individuals and together brings influence and brings traffic to The Verge, and a data and technology-driven publishing process. So next, Red Bull, who a lot of people think of Red Bull as a sugary drink manufacturer, an energy drink brand. But I think the question of, is Red Bull a drink company that produces content, or is Red Bull a content company that happens to sell drinks, is something that's going to come up more and more as these guys start producing better and better content than we're seeing on many of their competing media sites, despite being a brand. So if you go to redbull.com, you'll see videos of action sports, coverage of events in racing and diving and all sorts of things. If you go to IMDb, you'll see there are dozens of films that Red Bull has produced, including this film, The Art of Flight, which at a recent conference, content strategist Kyle Monson here in town called the best snowboarding video ever produced, and it's surprising because it was produced by a brand. So how is a brand able to create the best snowboarding video ever produced when there are media companies who are creating snowboarding videos and movies? They also have this magazine called the Red Bulletin, which essentially is as much circulation as Sports Illustrated and ESPN, the magazine combined, in their worldwide circulation. So people really care about the action sports content that Red Bull produces. I think the takeaways we can get from Red Bull and how they create content that makes a difference for their audience is they understand what their audience wants. They don't want to hear about energy drinks. They want to hear about action sports and jumping out of airplanes and riding dirt bikes. And Red Bull knows that, and they promote that lifestyle with their content. And everyone knows, yes, Red Bull is behind it, so they don't have to shove Red Bull in your face. They use their budgetary advantage for unique and high-impact storytelling. So they don't care that they're competing against media companies who are established. They have money to throw at it, so they want to create bigger and better stories, which for traditional media can be a little bit daunting, but there's ways traditional media can use this idea to up the ante also. They keep content and advertising separate, so readers are not confused, they're not betrayed, they can still feel a difference being made and not feel like they're being had. And also they do something interesting. They have a global network of freelancers and talent hunters who basically are looking for the best stories and the best storytellers no matter where they are in the world. They don't have to be confined to their office in New York or in California. The other one that is close to my heart is Mashable. So I've written for Mashable for a couple of years, and so I guess that disclosure. Mashable is a media property that has been around for several years. Started out as kind of the outgrowth of Pete Cashmore's personal branding efforts. He's a teenager in Scotland blogging about social media and technology on the internet. And today, 6-7 years later, Mashable is one of the most powerful media influences on Twitter and on Facebook. And they've expanded from just social media coverage to world coverage and a lot of other areas, anything that touches technology even tangentially. And the way they figured out how to grow their media business is they think of, and I know this from experience from writing for them, they think of stories in terms of headlines first. What are the headlines that people will click on? Because if they don't see it in social media and they don't click on it, or if they don't see it stand out from the rest of the stream, no one will come to it no matter how good the content is. So the story ideation starts with the headlines and then goes into reporting and figuring out what the content will be that can actually matter to people. They expect every page view, essentially. Yes, they have good SEO strategies, but they expect every page view to come from social, and they go into it thinking of that, and that's how they are able to build this successful property. Another thing that Mashable does is they have guest posters from around the internet, people who have their own followings in their own industries, write guest content, and the guest posters do it to get a plug and a link back to their site, but they bring audience to Mashable who eventually becomes assimilated into the Mashable following. They also do something really interesting. One of the main ways that Mashable has made money from the beginning is through sponsored content series, which now everyone's talking about branded content and it seems like a genius idea. What's interesting is Mashable was doing this years ago when it was still kind of an uncomfortable space. What's cool, I was talking with one of the heads of Mashable, the COO, I believe is her title now, and she said that Mashable readers love the brands who are on Mashable, which sounds preposterous, because who loves brands when they're coming to read content? It's because Mashable does these content series where a brand will sponsor a concept, and then Mashable writers and Mashable contributors will actually create the stories to the same standards that Mashable has, but they'll talk about and promote the concept and the feeling that the brand wants to be associated with. So this BMW Global Innovation Series does not talk about cars. By rule, they won't talk about cars, but it talks about innovation. And people love BMW because it provides a way for them to access this really cool content. And because BMW has money to pay to put behind this branding effort for itself, it allows Mashable to do bigger and better content and to stay afloat as a media property. So there we go. How does Mashable create difference-making content? They expect every user to come from social. They speak to the influencer crowd. So they want the people who read their content to share it. So they target those influencers first, not the end, perhaps like the man on the street. They want the person who will influence the man on the street. They write very clickable headlines that don't deceive, so people aren't disappointed when they get there. They post guest content to bring a new audience, and they use quality branded content series to fund the operation. So creating better content, my company Contently has a vested interest in saying these things, that you should create better content, you should use brands, and you should use freelancers. So partially disclosure, partially, I guess, to explain what we do. We're a startup who, our tagline is powering the next generation of publishing. We believe that two of the biggest trends happening are brands becoming publishers and the freelance revolution, where every media company is using freelancers to expand their talent base. So we build technology to help with that. We also really care about helping freelancers get work. And so we have a database of journalists from around the country who we screen and vet. We provide tools to help them with their personal branding. But perhaps most importantly, we're observers of these trends that are happening in content creation. Who's creating great content, and where are they coming from, and what are sort of the taboos that are going away. And so we report on that in our magazine called the Content Strategists, which is also at contently.com/blog. And these three examples that I talked about, we're coming out with stories in our long-form edition of the magazine, where we highlight a bunch of long-form stories. These case studies will be sort of in that. So please, come check it out. In summary, if I were to build a media company from scratch now, or if I were here sitting in the room thinking about my media company or my brand that's becoming a media company, what are the principles that I would use to create content that makes a difference for all of your stakeholders, for your business so you can make money, for the people who consume it and who care about you as a brand or a media company, and for the creative talent who's actually doing the work. Invest in the creative talent. Invest in content that is actually better than your competitors' content. Give the audience what it wants, not just what your advertisers want, because the audience will respect the advertisers if they get what they want from them. Be lean and use better technology to build your operation. A lot of the companies here today are going to talk about the better technology that you can use to be more efficient in creating content, in distributing content, in sharing content. Grow your audience using influencers and their content, and invite them to come influence your audience and to bring their audience to you. Monetize with sponsored content so you can invest in even better storytelling, so you can pay for the kind of storytelling that stands out in this world that's inundated with content. And if you're a brand, use sponsored content opportunities or build sponsored content properties and use your advantage that you have over media companies to create bigger and better content. And then finally, plan and publish for social first. The scales are tipping. This is another quote from our story on The Verge, from the co-founder and publisher of The Verge. As social media becomes more important for content distribution and Google search becomes less important, so the teeter-totter is shifting, you could say, there will be a race to quality. Only people that are dedicated to quality content in the long term will be best able to take advantage of this change. I say the media companies with the brightest futures are the ones racing to make a difference with their content. Thank you.